Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Alternative Cycling Network. I'm Russ, and I'm joined again by my co-hosts, Eric Spinney from SpinNet and Mike from Locked In. And this is where we give you unsponsored, unfiltered bike news. I've been using that tagline lately. I think that jives with us, right?
We're definitely until we get sponsored. Yeah.
Then it's going to be 10 minutes of like, this is a Dollar Shave Club, what sponsored today's video. Yeah.
Right. Brought to you by Squarespace.
Yeah.
They made our amazing website.
Yeah.
Let them build yours.
Yeah. Let me show you how easy it is.
Yeah.
All right. So today we are going to talk about the topic of suspension in gravel bikes. Do you need it? Kind of the new technologies that were announced yesterday. I swear they all plan the releases right the day before we do this show, just so we can talk about them.
It is unbelievable how quick the industry caught on. I just don't get it.
Yeah. But they also they know that we need 24 hours though. Like they can't do it like the day of. They know like we need a little bit of time to ease into it. So on Wednesday, because APM's on Thursday. Yeah.
Right. They're like, we want them to be able to collect their thoughts and feelings about these new drops. So again, if you're watching it on the Path Less Pedal channel, we have actually launched a new YouTube channel just for the show. I believe I might not have put the link in the description, but I will put it after. But Alternative Cycling Network is also on Instagram at Alt Cycling, and there's a link to the channel there. Hopefully, we're using this software that should be able to broadcast to both YouTube channels at the same time. So if you're watching from the ACN channel, please let us know. And if you don't know it exists, well, there's now a separate channel. And I think we might do one more live stream from doing both, but then after that, we're going to make the cut and just do all this content from the ACN channel. With that said, before we jump into the topic of the day, quick channel updates. So what have you guys been up to on your individual channels? Do you want to go first, Mike?
Yeah. I've been uploading a lot of different stuff. Last video was actually about all the video equipment that I carry. Everyone seemed to be shooting that and posting those videos, so I jumped on that. So I did a video on what cameras I carry and how I carry them, the different bags that I use to make it convenient, as well as a WTB Riddler tire review that just posted the same week as well.
Cool. All right. How about you, Eric? What's been going on in the hinterlands of Halifax?
Yeah. I've just kind of been just riding bikes, making videos about them.
First breeze of the day.
Yeah. Well, gosh.
So you did a conversion video, right? You converted a dad bike to a road bike.
Did I? Yeah, I guess I did. I do that a lot.
So much
I took the Rideau, last week and put drop bars back on it. I think Angela is gonna take over that bike. She rode it in another video when I started skateboarding. I started skateboarding on the channel. I don't know why. I just kind of started doing it. I always wanted to learn how to skateboard, and I'm like, well, I have this platform that like I'm allowed to do whatever I want on, and I think that cycling and skateboarding, like weirdly in the last like year or two, has really started to like where you see like cool skate racks and like surfing and bikes and skateboards and all that have really started to kind of like flirt with each other a little bit, and I was like, I want in on that. I want to be involved. So this week I've like been skateboarding and riding bikes on the channel and just trying to enjoy the summer and try and get out of the shop as much as I can.
Yeah.
Because I'm in the shop a lot.
I'm looking forward to the skateboard gravel ride.
There you go.
Yeah, that's very 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember I think the brand Fairdale had like a skateboard specific rear rack that they made for a while.
Yeah.
They do. Yeah. Well, on my channel, I feel like I did the inverse of what Eric usually does. I took a bar with drop bars, or a bike with drop bars on it, and put alt bars. I did an alt bar conversion video, put some Velo Orange granola bars, and documented that process. I felt bad about being labeled a drop bar elitist, so I was like, okay, well, I'll give this non-drop bar thing a try, and I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, I'm still dialing the fit and all that, but maybe dad bikes or alt bar bikes are the next big thing. What do you guys think?
I could see it. There's a lot of really cool like non-drop bar options. Those ones that like I never know what they're called. But whatever it is that look like almost like a Cafe Racer Clubman bar.
Like a Jones bar or the Muckluck with like the little T and the sweat back piece in the back. Yeah.
I'm like, man, these are
Muckluck bar.
Like these are sick, and I want a set just from the look of them, and I bet they'd be wildly comfortable. And
I think it's a Surly bar, the one that you're thinking of, Eric.
It might be, yeah. They're weird like that. They do weird stuff.
Yeah.
That takes me like a year to catch on to and be like, okay, I think I'm into this.
So there you have it, YouTube chat. We are no longer drop bar elitists. We're spreading our wings, trying the weird world of alternative bars. Let's see. For the topic of today, we're going to talk suspension on gravel bikes, and I feel like I have to preface this whole episode for a second and just say, they're a right choice for some people, and if you like them, then that's awesome. We don't want to come off as like snobs saying, this sucks, whatever. But I do think we're entitled to our opinions, of which we will share in a little bit. But if they're for you, that's awesome. I think we've all kind of dabbled to some extent with a suspension on gravel. Just trying to avoid all the butt hurt comments.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did you get some mean comments this week? That
I can sense people typing. They saw the title and thumbnail, and they're like, I know.
Spidey senses are going on. Yeah,
right. Yeah,
we're also trying not to burn any bridges with any major sponsors that are watching this. Like,
okay.
Gus, can you link the alt cycling? I see it a lot in the chat of people looking for it and can't find it. Can we throw that link in real quick in the chat just for everyone who's asking, so they can do that while watching? Make sure to keep our tab open so you can keep the audio going.
Yeah, cool. So with all that, we are gonna go and talk about the topic of the day. Very timely because there are a bunch of new releases. The big one, of course, is the new releases of both the Topstone and the Slate by Cannondale, both with some kind of suspension, lefty fork, some without. There were some variants, and they also are kind of, quasi full suspension bikes, right? They've got a pivot and some other technologies to add squish in the rear, and they also have a e-bike lefty quasi full suspension thing. So all the things, Cannondale did all the things this week.
They're like, right now seems like a good time when everybody's buying bikes and choice doesn't seem to matter because there's a shortage.
Right. Okay. So let's tackle the non-e gravel bike first. Did you guys get a chance to look at the Slate and the Topstone? Any thoughts on?
It's just the Topstone.
Just the Topstone. Okay.
Yeah. So I looked at it, and for me, I think it was I get Cannondale loves their lefty and the front suspension. The Topstone, I never got to ride it at Grinduro, but it like pretty much debuted right before I did it. So they had some demo bikes. I just didn't have time to ride them. But the Kingpin suspension, I liked in the sense of it didn't have a shock, kind of like the Niner Magic Carpet ride. And the tech made sense. It's a non-mechanical system for essentially, they say, equivalent of 30 mil of travel by the time it gets to the seat post. So you have a little pivot point, a lot more flex in the rear chain and seat stay area to allow the wheel to flex. And from the reviews I saw, because I didn't get to ride it myself, a lot of people said the back end feels great, but the front's really rigid because it's a rigid setup. When I saw that, I immediately thought Redshift stem. Then, a year or so later, Cannondale came out with their lefty. I think that's going to balance the bike out for most people. I understand doing it. I understand the amount of travel. I'm not a big fan of proprietary stuff with essentially a lefty fork means you have to have a lefty front wheel, hub set up, and everything else. So it's not as modular to the masses. If you're a Cannondale enthusiast and you're in that ecosystem, it makes sense. Or already have a Topstone, you can swap it out and upgrade. When I've tried my Redshift setup front and rear, it makes the bike more playful. There's a lot of areas where it is faster, some it is slower, and some you do feel the bob and movement of suspension like you would on a full suspension mountain bike on certain trails. But I get it. I think the boundaries and the limits that gravel's pushing, like everyone says all the time, it's basically a hardtail or a full suspension or a hardtail XC bike already, and now you're pushing those, trails. There was stuff on Granduro I wasn't super comfortable doing on that bike, but like you have like no choice because it's a single track area. No one can pass each other, and everyone's shouting at you, and you just got to send it hard enough to hopefully not crash. I would have loved a little bit of suspension movement on certain parts. The front suspension fork like adds a lot of weight.
Yeah, I'm curious, like how much of that is like a response to how extreme some of the unpaved sections of gravel events are getting.
Sure. I think they're getting very mountain bikey, and I think that I get both sides where you have riders you have your Ted Kings, and he's on 40 Cs. And I'm on a 2.2 650, and I'm like, I want more tire because like this is too gnarly because I don't have the skill set to make up for it. So that's something where I get it for the mass market, but also it's such a higher price point to bring you into it because you're paying for. I think they're selling that for I want to say $1,500.
Oh dang!
And I don't think that I'm 90% sure that does not include the front wheel, because if you already have a Topstone, you want to upgrade. You have to either buy another front wheel or convert yours, no price on the hub, and then you got to pay for new spokes and lacing and everything else. You might as well buy another one. So that is a big investment for someone who already has a bike, or let's say you have another brand of bike and just like the look or the features of it. That's a big financial, investment for what I think it's 30 to 40 mil of travel. So
yeah. So big barrier to entry in terms of getting into suspension gravel. How about you, Eric? Any thoughts?
I looked at it. I mostly just read the titles and like the small blurbs where the general consensus of those blurbs, and maybe they were clickbait, was like, it was sort of engineering gimmicky and, this and that. Would kind of expect. I think a lot of new bikes maybe have a little bit of that. There's benefits to anything that I think most companies design. Cost certainly comes into it, but the more that I've ridden like good suspension setups on my mountain bike versus like what I could afford at like a younger age or even not long ago, I start to get that like actual suspended feeling where you're isolated from everything. And I'm like, man, I could see how like I could see how this would be beneficial. But like I can't get over the numbers. Like 30 millimeters or like 40 millimeters is not a world that I'm used to. And no matter what, I'm gonna sit here and say, well, that's not enough. And I think that might just come from not being able to ride them. But at the same time, I think they did a way better job of designing a good looking, like full suspension, we'll use air quotes, gravel bike than what Niner did.
Yeah. Oh yes, 100%. Yeah. Well, granted, Niner used off the shelf Fox fork for the front.
Yeah,
that wasn't their design. Yeah.
Not to mention like the rear end is just like you look at the Niner and you're like, well, that's just like a dainty small little mountain bike. Where Cannondale looks like, maybe the end product or like the end feel is very similar, but I stay with the fact that vanity is a big part of our industry, and I would not want to ride. I wouldn't want to ride the Niner, and I would want to ride the Cannondale. I
have to say when I saw pictures of the bike, I thought it was definitely more elegant in execution this time around. Like the previous versions where they had lefty fork, I felt like they just slapped on whatever lefty fork they had, and now it feels more cohesive to the bike. I think the the execution of the rear suspension is definitely more subtle than the Niner, and I think more in line to if I were to opt for one or the other, like you guys said, I'd probably lean more towards the Cannondale than the Niner. So
yeah, I think their rear suspension solution, out of everyone to integrate it into the frame, I think is the most elegant, simplistic design, because like any full suspension rear, yes, the bearings are going to wear out, but you have one set of bearings, and it isn't going to be as active. You're not going to have as much movement, and that's a lot easier as far as I'd hope it's not proprietary size of bearings. They're using some kind of stock, standard.
It's Cannondale, man.
Sure, it's
standard.
It's probably 0.1 smaller or bigger than anything else in the market. But in theory, that should be a lot easier to maintain and service for a long time. The fork is a different story for me, but that kind of leads me into the aftermarket suspension options compared to the OEM frame built ones. But I think they've nailed it on the head of, like, if I was going to get a turnkey name brand gravel bike and I wanted that suspension or more compliance, I think they've nailed it as far as aesthetic to compliance to weight ratio. I think that's like the beautiful blend between their frame. I don't know what it weighs more than the, if it wasn't suspended, but in like compared to like the Diverge that doesn't have a pivot, but I would pay for it or take the weight penalty, quote unquote, because it makes sense and it looks pretty good.
Yeah. So I guess who do you think this bike is for? Is it for I don't know, like who's this for?
I think it's for there are always going to be riders that are in tougher terrain than I'm in. And there are tough terrain that I won't even touch because I know it's a mountain bike trail. I think there are people who live in certain areas where it's just gnarly no matter what. And maybe, fully rigid gravel bike with, squishy parts or squishy tires is not enough. But it's hard because the Geo is not super friendly as far as like endurance geometry. It's not ultra racy. It's not ultra racy, but I would say it's like a medium between like a endurance gravel, like a gravel geometry compared to cyclocross. I think, in my opinion, the Topstone's kind of in the middle, so it's a little more, racy than the guy that I would assume would want that. Because for me, I wouldn't mind that middle ground. I think that's a nice happy medium for me. But also, like, I wouldn't want the weight and the complexity of having to deal with the fork. I would rather go like with my redshift stem or some type of aftermarket front end suspension setup to dial out the rear compliance to the front to make it more balanced. But yeah, I mean, that's where I would sit with it.
Yeah. How about you, Eric? Any thoughts on who's going to buy this bike?
There's definitely people who will.
Yeah.
I know it wouldn't be me. I know I wouldn't go out and buy it.
Yeah.
We all know that, Eric.
yeah. I guess. I don't know. I wouldn't say that it's going to be your typical like wanting to get into it rider.
It's
like
definitely like an enthusiast bike, right? You really have to be
it is
bought
like,
in.
And like me picturing myself riding, and I'm like, okay, like heavy in the drops, riding as fast as you can over like almost like a very smooth, like dry lake bed that like snakes down somehow. Like that's like the terrain that I see. And I'm like, okay, who are those people? Like that's very specific. But I can picture the feeling of like flying over something that's like pretty rocky, fairly fast, comfortably without feeling the edge of all those rocks. And that makes me smile. But I only know that feeling from mountain biking. So like, it's hard to picture that feeling on a gravel bike as well. I guess it would be like probably, I would bet most cross country riders would have some interest in this.
You know what? That's an interesting point. I think that the mountain guy, like the opposite of us. I mean, granted, like Eric, you're a little in between, but I think it's the mountain guy getting into road. That's where like the Chamois Hagar and this kind of, I think, fit, because the Chamois Hagar geo-wise is very close, but this is more suspension-wise a little closer to where you're not giving up like fully on everything you're used to. You're kind of like half-stepping it. So I could see that. I think the MTB to gravel converter, or the guy who wants to train all season or race all season or whatever, I think that's really where it works.
Because I don't see it as a stepping stone to mountain biking. Like, it's just not.
Right.
Like, there's cheaper mountain bikes. Like, if you want to, like, if you're like, oh, I don't really know, like,
you mean you can get a mountain bike for under $10,000 for that Diverge S-Works? What?
You can.
Yeah.
You can. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's again, I'm not gonna. Someone's gonna love the bike. Someone's gonna buy the bike. For me, the barrier, let's say even if price for no barrier, it is kind of being locked into all the proprietary parts and bits. Like sorry, no,
it's a shameless plug. It's fine.
Yeah, philosophically, it just bothers me when things are too proprietary, because you have to hope that the company is going to support that 3, 5, 10 years down the line.
Right.
Otherwise you're just stuck with some weird ass parts. So
that are kind of broken.
That's a real big thing with me with this bike is front hub specific front wheel. You're ideally hope that this new gen, because they do make an aluminum and a carbon version of that fork, is all serviceable, and they make the kit for long enough. You have from what I've read, a wider BB standard than most, so your crankshaft options are pretty much just Cannondale. And then you have the asymmetrical rear wheel setup that's dished differently. So if you have aftermarket wheels, you have to redish the rear and then relace the front to get the hub to work. So and then you have the 25.0 or 25.4, whatever the seat post is. So very little aftermarket support there. Really, you're diving headfirst into Cannondale.
Yeah, it's a Cannondale bike.
And then they hope that they stick with some of these standards, because, I mean, I know that I've rebuilt some old bikes that had 27.0 seat posts, and that was a nightmare to try to find something. I couldn't imagine trying to find the bearings for the rear if it is something proprietary, like in 5 years when it is a used bike. We all, Eric especially lives in that world, so he knows what that's like. So it's like when he wants a Topstone in 2030, when Eric needs a Topstone, is he going to get bearings? That's what we all want to know.
I'll probably use something dumb like clay.
Yeah.
To build new ones.
He'll just take the hole saw and just drill that thing out to get the bearing size he wants with a little bit of JB weld in there, and we'll call it a day.
Yeah, it feels like it's almost in software, it'd be like the equivalent of subscribing to an application rather than being able to buy it and do with it what you will.
Sure.
You're kind of at their mercy. Like any upgrade path is going to be within that ecosystem. So,
right.
Yeah. How about so they also came out with a e-bike version. It uses the Bosch mid-drive, which is a pretty nice e-bike motor in terms of the e-bike world. Gravel or electronic gravel bikes is. What do you guys think?
I'm okay with it.
Like them.
I just watched, like, Angela and I were sitting out front, like old retired people, watching people go by, and this family went by, of a family of 4 with 4 e-bikes, and like that's what they were doing today. And none of them looked particularly cheap. Like, e-bikes still aren't cheap these days anyway. So like that is the prime family, like the dad that like Mike, what this is like. You work in a bike shop and someone comes in not knowing a thing, and they're just like, give me the most expensive one. And it's like, you don't want that. That's not what you want. You're going to hate that so much. And they're like, give me the most expensive one. You're like, oh, okay. So like, I don't know if that family would necessarily be like that, but in California, I know a lot of people just like have money.
Right.
So
It depends where you're at. But yeah, no, I think for me, it's a great equalizer. There's two camps I believe in e-bikes for. And I mean, there's multiples, but I think the two big ones for me that I find personally appealing as a cyclist is one, the guy that wants to go out and ride with his buddies.
Mm-hmm.
I had many of clients that came in when I managed the bike shop and, fit, unfit, overweight, underweight, whatever your case may be, new to riding, old to riding, used to ride 30 years ago, trying to get back into it. They were out there longer and keeping up with whoever to enjoy the day. So yes, if you're putting out a little bit less effort, but you're riding double the time, you're going to burn the calories you want. You're going to get fitter. You're going to get more in shape. I saw dudes drastically drop weight, get in shape in, 6 months on an e-bike because they're just going out more because it's more fun. And I've ridden them. They're super fun. We had a couple of shop rides where I'd go out and I'd bring my camera and I would take pictures for everybody to to post and so they could download them or whatever when we were done. And I would just trail behind everyone and then zoom up all the climbs, get in front of everyone, take a bunch of pictures, and then they'd all pass me. And then all the team racers would be on the next climb. And then I'd pass them while taking pictures, laughing hysterically, going past. And that was a blast. And I tell everybody, anyone that came to test drive one, I would just put it on max. I'm like, just go ride it. And I tell everyone, you're just going to feel like you're an elite athlete, not trying. And it's a fun feeling. I would, if I had a longer commute or something like that, I would totally get an e-bike to go to work because it's super fun. I think for gravel, it's the same thing. You're going to get into it. And if you have, for me, I've seen plenty of couples or married or not, the husband has a pedal bike or she's got a pedal bike. And then the other one who doesn't ride gets an e-bike so that everyone enjoys it. The one who's not into the cycling, gets to keep up and not have to kill themselves. And then the one that is into it, that wants to work out, is having to try hard because 28 miles an hour, barely breathing hard, is hard to keep up with. Yeah. And I've had a guy who used to crit race, and he's like, yeah, we go on the river trail. He's like, she's laughing at me, texting, taking pictures, doing 28 miles an hour on her hybrid, and I'm in the drops, trying to do 300 watts, and trying to keep up with this. There's so many avenues that it really fits into. And I think it opens up people getting out there, and I think that's going to eventually help infrastructure for all of us. That's what I hope for.
Yeah, for sure. I've got some acquaintances where one of the persons is a legit pro cyclist, and her partner just came out of some crazy heart surgery. And but they can still ride together. She can do her intervals, and he can take out the e-bike while he's in recovery mode, and still, they can still enjoy the outdoors. Yeah. So
he could motor pace for her, no problem.
Right, for sure. Yeah, I wish quality e-bikes that use things like the Bosch drive, and I know they cost what they cost. I wish they'd be a little bit more. They could somehow be a little bit more affordable because I feel like a lot more people could benefit. If it could somehow be at a better price point. But I think do you remember the complete build of the Cannondale one? It's
up. I want to say it's over 3, maybe over 4.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean it's hard with the mid-drive motors in general. It's going to cost more. The rear hub drive motors, if anybody's looking for an e-bike, they are more affordable. They aren't as smooth, and they're going to kick. So there's times when I've ridden some to test drive and you're trying to half pedal it around a corner, and then it kicks the motor in and does a little of that, and you get a little sketchy. That happens with the mid drive because it's a cadence sensor, not a torque sensor. And that's the difference really between feel. Now, if you're just going down the bike trail, no one's ever going to know that. But there are scenarios where the rear hub drive can be a little sketchy. But that's where the price point does go down. I always tell people for mid-drive, minus the actual mid-drive and the crankset, everything else is standard bike part, which is nice for longevity. If you want to upgrade your wheels, it's wheels. If you want to, anything else is not really difficult.
Yeah. And I'm glad they at least went with Bosch is a legit, e-bike motor.
Yeah.
I think to
good
be
stuff.
able to work on them at a bike shop, you have to have special training and have the tools to kind of access the brain of the motor. So it's definitely a high quality product. I think a bit of a barrier to a lot of people though, which is a bit of a bummer. But again, I can see why it costs that much.
But like, do you not think that maybe this is like a Tesla-like phenomenon where like do a really premium sort of product, see if it does well. If it does well enough, use that to fund maybe a slightly more inexpensive but still quality product, and then boom, one for like the absolute mass market.
Maybe, or they could just be pulling a SRAM where it's like, bye-bye.
This is us now.
I think
say.
there's so many that are still trying to establish, and like Bosch is up there. The cool thing if you do get a Bosch motor is you can go to a lot of different dealers because a lot of mainstream brands use Bosch. It's the more affordable stuff currently that's rear hub drive that may or may not, like we got a lot of random stuff when I worked at a shop of like bikes I've never heard of. I'm like, that website doesn't even work anymore, man. I'm looking for there's a bike that like came in. I didn't even know how to take the rear wheel off. It was so complicated, like how many wires are going. So there's a lot of funky stuff in the market right now. I think that's settling. But I think the mid-drive makes the most sense, but is the most expensive. I don't think that's going to get any cheaper for a while, unless you go with the route that like Pinarello or Focus has gone, where I forget the name of their motor, but essentially it's like an assist. So it's not as powerful as like the Bosch is in the Topstone, but it's meant for, they mainly use it in their road bikes, but it's meant for the guy who wants to ride the group ride with his buddies, and he's just getting into it to where he just needs like that extra 100 watts of assistance, but he wants to go for 50 or 60 miles. So it is a rear hub motor, but it's just to give him the bump that he needs. Maybe he's over 20 something miles an hour, it's going to kick off because he should be rolling fast enough at that point. But if you pull that battery pack out, they give you like this extra panel to cover it, and now you're only adding like a pound to the bike, and it's supposedly like no friction added. So there's a couple still different mindsets. I think same thing with gravel bikes. It's still working itself out,
if I was just thinking, if I were a e-bike or e-bike motor brand that was targeting the roadie market, you know what I would name the brand? It would be some clever play on words, but it would be EPO, like electronic pedal overdrive. Electronic pedal overdrive, man. EPO.
And everyone would buy.
Quick, trademark that. Trademark that.
You get an EPO wristband with every purchase. Yes.
Right.
Just a slightly off shade of yellow.
Cool. Well, there were other new releases. Suntour released a bunch of gravel forks. What was the travel? It looked like it ranged from like 30 to 60?
40 to 60, I believe.
Or 40, okay.
I thought it was 30, 50, 60. Get our facts straight maybe next live stream. But yeah, I think it was just was it one fork or was it a couple?
I believe it's adjustable. I'm going to pull it up right now, but I believe it's adjustable. And that was a big draw. The main thing was it's the reason I like theirs is it's not universal, but you could adapt it to your bike if you have 3 axles, like you're good. That's the big thing.
Not to mention like the fact that they built it to be like to look like a straight blade fork. Like I think the only thing missing on making that design, like I already would ride it. Like the way it is right now, I would already ride it.
Wow.
Which is a lot.
Suntour. Wow.
Like I like the way it looks. I'd love to see it like built up on like some pretty cool bikes. I think the last thing that I'd love to see these like gravel forks do that especially want to maybe like not look like a mountain bike fork is like do something with the fork crown, or someone try and do something with an RS1, like the
I remember those.
the RockShox RS1,
Yeah.
like an inverted fork that
Yeah.
works. Because obviously the RS1 didn't do well. But like, I think it would be the coolest looking gravel fork, like inverted dirt bike style
Yeah.
fork with not too long a travel. You don't have to worry about like the stanchions up at the top, like, you know, maybe some dust covers over the stanchions. That to me, well, honestly, just like basically a lefty with two sides. Like,
You
That's
mean
what I
a
want.
standard
Righty.
fork? You mean a standard fork?
no, but it
You
would
wanna-
be
you-
it would be
You want a
inverted.
lefty and a righty?
I want
together?
together, inverted, just like the lefty is, and
Yeah.
without offset in the axle and stuff. Man, that would be like I would ride that on a gravel bike. Like,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I look.
no
so
issue. I'd sell it.
It is. I thought it was an adjustable fork, but yeah, no, we're right. So it's 40, 50, and 60. They're 3 different forks. They do offer different rakes and obviously axle to crown ratios depending on the bike that you're running. But the big thing for me that I like over the Fox Shock, because I watched Justin's video, is pretty much all modern gravel bikes, if they're disc, are flat mount.
Mm-hmm.
And the Fox is still post mount because I'm assuming they're reusing the lower stanchion from another fork.
It looks like it.
Right. So this is a flat mount. So that's killer for anybody who has to buy a different brake or having to run the adapter, which looks awful. That's a big thing. Having the adjustable mounts, the clearance wise is not progressive, but it's in line with what's available, where it's a 700 by 45 or a 650 by 50. So right up on the top end of mainstream, I would say, not again the progressive of looking forward in the spec of things
They
that
could
start
go
to get
wider.
bigger and bigger.
I feel like they should have gone a little bit wider because the tires are going to get bigger and
Yeah.
plus mud.
Right. No, exactly. So when I talked to Cobalt, who's the frame manufacturer that I work with my gravel build that I did, my monster gravel build, he was basically saying roughly whenever you hear tire clearance, 5 to 6 millimeters is what every frame or fork clearance is going to have to give you. So like my frame technically clears a 2.1. I got a 2.2 in there with 3-4 mils of travel or of space. For me in California, that's plenty of room. I don't have enough mud here. So yeah, that 45, I don't think would hit a 50, but it might scoot in there depending on, again, pressure, rim width, and terrain that you're riding and if there's mud. So I think, yes, if I was redoing it, or any of us, I think I would have gone a little more progressive because a little more clearance is never a bad thing to prolong one product lasting longer. But, that's me.
Yeah. I do like, I feel like when the gravel bikes with the front suspension fork came out a couple years ago, it felt very slapdash, right? It's some kind of, obviously, retooled, maybe slightly reworked mountain bike fork. But with these iterations, I'm still not going to go run out and buy one. But I feel like they're being a little bit more integrated into what a gravel bike is. It's less, I don't know, less like of a Frankenstein look. I mean, the Suntour is like a pretty nice looking fork.
Yeah. I mean, realistically, it's 300 grams, I think, more than the lefty, but not having to go lefty front wheel. I would take that over buying a new wheel or having to like spend a bunch of money releasing it. Also, that thing's $500.
Right.
The lefty is $1,500, I think, depending on if it's carbon or aluminum. And then even your Fox, I want to say, is $800. I think it's $799 for the Fox one. So I mean, killer deal. And if it is just a hot swap with your brake caliper, that's something you could realistically take on and off on a Tinker Tuesday. No big deal. 5 minutes. Look at that plug.
Just a quick 5 minute.
Just a quick 5 minutes. I mean, I already, like that's what I'm saying. Like it would be in theory, like I would love to have it for certain rides. And if it's that easy and the standards are all the same through axle, I'm not having to get a 15 mil front wheel because they offer 12 and 15.
Oh, they do. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. I think that's really where it realistically is. If it's cut to length and everything works, it's a hot swap. I mean, it's a, hey, the night before, you know where you're going, you grab your beer or whatever, and you swap your fork out. Like I do more than that on my gravel bike, trying to make it work for road and gravel, the other day. So it works out.
Yeah, that does make it appealing. Like I didn't realize that it was. I mean, it's still hundreds of dollars, but it's still relative to the lefty very affordable.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
yeah, third of the price.
It makes it such that if you're suspension gravel curious, it wouldn't be like a huge outlay of money, and you wouldn't have to buy all the other like additional parts to make it work on your bike.
Yeah.
And also, it looks better.
And it looks better.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean that's really what we're here for. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Because you'd have a righty along
Yeah,
with it.
That's right.
It's
You've
like
got
a
the
bonus
extra-
fork.
and a righty and a lefty. Yeah.
So it's interesting. Like I feel like okay, so both new releases, both suspension gravel, kind of almost very the complete opposite philosophically. One is very proprietary, wants you to live in their ecosystem, and another one is clear that it wants to be like a aftermarket option and work with the bike that you have and the parts that you already have. So
I'd be curious to see if that Suntour fork, if it
it's good.
remains well. If it's good, sure. I mean, for $500 US, geez, I hope it is. Like, that's still not an inconsequential amount of money. Like,
right.
Yeah, I think, and I the only thing that I read obviously is still jarring because I haven't seen any physical reviews of it because I'm assuming it just landed. Is kind of how the lefty did. They did it the right way where they make that initial suspension travel harder to hit than your mountain bike. So you're not going to get that bob. That's what the big thing with the lefty is that they say, I forget what they call it, but basically that initial, like for mountain, it's the small bump sensitivity is increased with a gravel suspension because you're going to potentially ride in road and they want it to react, but could take a little bit more to react. So as long as they tune it that way and you're not just feeling like you're doing this the whole time, like I would totally be interested in trying it. I think that would be a very viable option for a lot of OE stuff. I mean, I tell a lot of people with Suntour shocks, as long as it's like their mid to high level, if you've never ridden a mountain bike and you ride a Fox versus a Suntour and you're a year or so in, like there's very few things you're going to kind of realize the difference of.
Probably weight would be the
right.
biggest.
Yeah. The weight. Yeah, for sure. But again, it's like to get you into a suspended gravel bike or to add one for 500, there is more cost-effective options in my opinion with Redshift. I've been really big fan of their stuff. Their stem adds 30 mil of travel and their seat post has 35, which is essentially what the lefty and the rear suspension on the Topstone does, and that's a couple $100.
Right.
And it only adds 1.1 pounds average, depending on what your seat post and stem combo is, to add a pound to your bike that you can easily remove if needed and get almost the same travel. I'm still a big fan of that. I think this in the 40 to 60 mil travel makes more sense because it is giving you something extra. Everything else that's currently on with the Fox AX and essentially the lefty at 30 mil travel, I'm not gaining anything out of it besides spending more money.
Right.
You know.
Definitely a lot for little.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to compare, a full Redshift setup with the Cannondale lefty and see. Again, I understand like the quality of suspension might be different, the way it suspends, but if it's equivalent travel, like, and you're just riding a gravel road, how much more, what's the difference going to be, and is it going to be worth spending buku bucks to get there?
You know what, Russ, you'd be the best person to I think know of that already, because the Redshift is a pivot. I mean, you did your video on Future Shock versus that. I think that's the difference of how this, your linear travel versus your, basically your pivot. Yes, I don't think it is the same, but I'm just thinking like a couple $100 again and lower weight.
All right.
You're adding 400 grams, not 1,000 grams, just for the fork, and you can do that front and rear. So what was your, just because I don't know off the top of my head, your takeaway between the Future Shock and the Redshift for the front?
So when I had the Diverge with the Future Shock, they set it up with whatever the middle hardness
Spring?
So Yeah, so it wasn't super soft. It wasn't the super hard one. And I felt like it was a little disconcerting going hard into a corner because it would really, I could feel it. It felt vague, and I didn't like it. Somehow the pivot of the red shift, not as maybe like smooth overall, but like when you're taking a corner hard, it felt a little bit more predictable. I also managed to bottom out the future shock, which was really weird, especially when turning. So I maybe I chose too soft of a spring, even though it was the middle one. But those, I could never really get comfortable on.
So you were on the version 1, not the version 2 with the knob.
No.
Okay.
It was the version 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. And Eric, your dealer was a Specialized dealer, wasn't it?
Yeah, I got to do like a spring ride on a Roubaix with it. I felt it worked pretty good, but I only got to do that one ride on it, and I might have just been trying to keep my boss happy. I don't know, because it was his bike. He's like, "What'd you think?"
Eric, your freeze stance was like this. It looks really good. Like,
did I freeze again? Damn it!
Yeah, but it's like this. It's super solid. Like, if you're gonna freeze, it's better than like It's like
right.
Like it's literally
that's just Eric's resting bitch face. Like that's
it. Yeah,
just being happy.
Everybody subscribe to Alternative Cycling Network so we can get Eric a Wi-Fi router booster for
just a booster.
Yeah. Just
I don't want to spend too much. But yeah, I don't know. My memory of it is vague. I don't remember if it really worked that well or not. I remember feeling no less tired than I would normally at that event. Like Wolfville Roubaix, I normally do every year. As a matter of fact, I do remember feeling a little bit worse because I hated the saddle position. Like to jump into an event on someone else's bike because I wanted to try something else without really riding it first. I was like, okay, saddle height, good. Like I remember the thought of being like, wow, I'm like dying of pain right now. And I think that was kind of one of the first times that I really experienced that. And I was trying to think about like the future shock and how it was working. I remember getting some like cool shots of it like working, but I was like, is it just cool that this thing's like, going up and down, or like is it really doing its thing? Right. I think I might have even like gone out of my way to like hit some potholes and be like, is this it? I don't know.
Is this thing on? Just like hit it. Like,
And I think like in my thought, if you have to think about it that much, it's obviously not as worth it as the marketing makes it out to be. But I do remember, like, I always rode mountain bikes that had really low end. Like the nicest suspension I had was like a RockShox XC28, which is not a good fork. It's like a steel stanchion fork. I remember like, it was pretty well broken in like 2 months, but I kept riding it. It was basically just a coil spring that was like, whatever. And when Nick sold me his factory 32, and I rode it for the first time at the same trails I've always ridden, and like, felt it compressing and rebounding the way that it should, and like not feeling the pain that all of the normal routes that I go over, like it wasn't there. And I was like, oh,
it's like when you drink like good whiskey or wine, and like you never know because you always drink like barefoot or like whatever, and then you finally have like a nice glass and like, damn it, this ruins it for me forever now. Like you can never write something worse. Yeah.
And I mean, I did like when Schwinn sent the Moab, it had a Judy on it, but it still had enough. Like it was heavier. I could still tune it to feel the same, and that was a cool feeling as well. I was like, okay, so there is a spot. like the factory is an expensive fork. Like factory
Right.
is
Yeah.
top
$1,000.
of the line, right? That 1,000 US.
Yeah, million Canadian. Got it.
Right.
Yeah.
But like I was like, okay, I can get the Judy to feel very close, like 90%. Biggest, like the worst part was like, okay, it's heavy. Like this is heavy compared to the carbon felt, like with light parts on it. That was a very spoiled moment. I don't like that I know any of this now because it's like, but like, that is a tough spot to cheap out on. Like you can get the performance, but the weight's not there. I mean, mountain biking suspension's an expensive game to be in.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, so this is another. I've been reading the comments. So Russ, I totally forgot. You did that bomb track with that MRP suspension. Alex, shout out to Alex. He mentioned that. How was that? If you can remember the two, I still have my red chips on my bike, so I still know what it feels like. But what was like, if you can remember those two difference wise? Obviously the weight's there, but
yeah, so I remember thinking that it was hella fun going down the double or the chunky double track, and was a more pleasant experience than the Redshift.
Okay.
I remember it made a difference. Like depending on the terrain, I just remember thinking that to really get the most out of it, you'd have to just really ride some really shitty stuff. But
well,
like
what was the travel on that? If anybody,
I think it was 30-ish, 30.
Oh, really?
30 or
Okay.
40, yeah. So it wasn't a ton, but it was fun. Like that was a bike where I didn't think I would like it. It had lots of things that I was typically I never used a dropper post before, and now I'm like, okay, droppers are cool, especially. I'd actually get a dropper before a suspension fork after
I agree with that.
having tried both.
Yeah.
It just descending even on paved stuff, it just feels less sketchy. So, but it was a cool bike, and it was fun. It was really tucked and short in the rear, so it climbed really well. And the going down, you could just let it go, like just lower the dropper and then let the fork take it. So I guess depending on the terrain, I'd be totally into it. I think if I thought about like the kind of everyday routes I would take, I probably wouldn't use the fork to its full capability and get the most out of it, So for me, it's more of a calculus of, am I going to fully utilize every ounce of travel to its most more often than not? And
so for me, the one last question for it would be for Russ, because you've done it. Dirty Kansas. Yeah or nay on the fork?
I think the weight penalty is a little bit more than I would want, and also just the possibility of it breaking or clogging up somehow when it gets like really rough and sloppy. I think on an event that long, you'd want to minimize the amount of moving parts. I know.
Okay.
I know what's the name. The maple syrup guy, Ted King.
Ted King. Yep.
Yeah, rocks
Untapped.
and
yeah. I did a review for him like years ago before I even knew who he was.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But I think just my paranoid proclivities of things always going wrong and me breaking them, then I like the less is more option for something like that.
Okay.
So YouTube comments. If you're in the comments and you're digging the discussion so far, give it a thumbs up. It helps with the video. And hopefully I posted the link to the new ACN YouTube channel. If you're not already subscribed there, we're going to be moving the show all the way over there. I think in maybe like one or two more episodes. Yeah, next one.
A week and a half.
In a week and a half.
Yeah.
So you definitely, if you like this stuff, you don't want to miss out. It's going to be living on that channel, and we're gonna do some other fun videos around it. So,
and we have a Instagram. We're probably gonna be taking polls for topics because if the bike industry isn't releasing on a Wednesday like it usually is, because they're having an off week or COVID-19 is delaying product development or something like that. Please make sure to follow us on there because you might get your topic on here.
Yeah. I think we chose this topic literally this morning. It's like, okay, what dropped?
No, we
About-
didn't.
weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got a big editorial calendar, guys. You'd be surprised.
Yeah,
We've got
the
topics
organization.
until 2025.
We are in there. We are
Right.
in there.
So
Eric's
if you guys
getting
have,
the top zone in 2030, and our calendars fans.
Yeah,
filled up.
we're ready for that video, like that live
Yeah.
stream.
yeah. So if you guys have questions, so Steve, where'd that comment go? We'll start here. I'm going to go from the latest to the last comment and move up. Is 26 dead?
No,
No. Okay.
no.
Actually, I'd like to see more development around there. I think, especially for in particular shorter riders, it still makes a good wheel size.
I think it's mainly like a decent tire in 26, and also maybe there's a calculator or something out there. If I could get something that would tell me, hey, if I got a 26 to this, it would be the equivalent of, like, there's a lot of that for 650. They need to develop something like that for 26.
That's true.
I don't think the industry would, but
I answered this question as no, because, and I would have said yes probably 2 years ago, but the answer is no now, because when I was searching for tires for that bike, I was like, oh, there's not going to be anything. There's just the Compass or Renee Hurst,
Right.
Rat Trap Pass, and like I wreck tires. Like, I'm not even hard on them. I always find the sharpest rocks. And I was like, man, that's going to be expensive, but like, I can't ride these that are on here like for too long, because they're rock hard in the sidewall. Like, this is going to be a bummer. And I did mention in a video, I was like, I don't want to ride these. I even asked for advice from you, Russ. You didn't give me anything.
You did?
I did,
missed
yeah.
that.
Watch
Sorry.
every single one of my videos that I post almost every day. And like, people were like, well, you didn't look at the Schwalbe, I think they're like the Big Apples or something. I was like, oh, those are cool. And then like, you didn't look at like Continentals, almost their entire lineup, like you can get in 26. Did you check this? Did you like, this company's doing them now. This company's doing them now. And then everybody was like, hey, Gravel Kings come in 26 and a 2.1 in funny colors. And I was like, oh, those are them. Like, that's what I need. And I ordered them. They're supposed to be here soon. They were supposed to be here Monday, actually. And I don't know what the holdup is, but like the plethora of choices that there are versus what I thought there were tells me that there's a market. And it might not be a market in the new bike world, but enough people are taking old 26s or trying to use their, like, there's no good all mountain versions, but like for like the nerdy stuff that we're into, like, man, there's tires. Like, there's tires to choose from.
Yeah, I saw the Gravel Kings today. I was looking at what size they offer and some of the new stuff they came out with, and yeah, I saw 26 2.1. I was like, all right.
Like, that's neat. Like,
so here you go. Here's some math. 26 by 2 is like 650B by 42 diameter wise.
All right.
Still somewhat small, like a little bit small.
Right.
So that would
but
be
if you had a 26 disc bike, you could technically go either way then.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've actually seen I've seen people do some weird stuff with like old hybrids where they've put 700s in them, and then like the hole that is drilled for the reflector on the fork, they'll put like an old school like stamp steel caliper on it, and then boom, road bike.
Or
like,
Paul makes that one like almost canty looking brake, but the brake
the adjustable,
super adjustable, so you could run a 700. There's some weird. Paul makes some funky stuff that works for that kind of nerdery like we are. So yeah, I get that.
So Will Reynolds asks, are you going to continue live streaming on Thursday, or is there other content planned for other days?
Both.
I think, yeah. I mean, the goal is to develop content independent from from this channel or respective channels and build that brand, if you will. So definitely live streaming weekly. I think we're at least committed to that.
Yeah.
And then hopefully in the future we'll have bandwidth. I know you both have like real jobs, right?
Yeah.
Currently,
Yeah.
sort of working on not having that, but correct, yes.
I think it's going to be really it's really going to be you guys. So everyone who's watching this, it's going to be your comments, and we're going to take all that in consideration. We're all constantly watching the live stream comments, and we can check in on the comments that go beyond this when it's posted, to watch anytime you want. But I think really that's going to develop the channel into what it's going to be and what content you want to see. If it's individual, different styles, we all have a different look, different things. We're all into different things. If you want to see, Eric, do a backflip with a skateboard on his bike, down a mountain, you can just put that in the comments below, and it may or may not happen.
He'll do it.
I might just do that.
Yeah, we just got. I mean, if we can get Eric a Wi-Fi booster, I mean, that's the kind of content you could see. So I think that's really where we're all loving. I think this aspect of the community. I've loved the feedback. I think it's great. I think that we're willing to put in the work, but we want to hear from you guys, because we can always make assumptions on what you want to see, but we'd rather hear from you. And if it's feasible, we'll make it happen.
Yeah, because in Canada, they only have one Wi-Fi router, and everyone connects to it.
Yeah,
it is
tough.
That's
why Eric is frozen again.
Yeah, free Wi-Fi, free healthcare, baby. That's it. That's what they got.
Yeah, Starlink got here first. It's weird. I don't know how.
Yeah, so we definitely want to do more content. So if you've not already subscribed to the new channel, please do. And for those of you guys that have, I mean, the channel grew really quickly. It broke that 1,000 subscriber mark in, I don't know, like 48 hours.
Yeah.
No, it was I think we were at least 500 at the end of the first day.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's probably two or 3 days it broke 1,000. So you guys are awesome. Definitely shows that there's demand. At least 1,000 of you. And you know what? 1,000 people that will show up and watch the content is, I think, better than having, 1 million kind of half-hearted viewers. Although AdSense might
yeah.
be different.
I still have a full-time job.
And then we're like, you know what? That's fine. Yeah, we'll take it. Yeah.
Cool. Well, so we've discussed gravel. I'm trying to take it home and summarize here. So we've seen kind of two takes on gravel suspension. One a little bit more complicated, a little bit more proprietary. Not saying it's bad. Someone's going to buy it, someone's going to love it. And then one approach from Suntour, which looks like a great aftermarket option. Hopefully, it'll be a good OEM option as well, so people can try it on complete bikes. What else did we talk about? E-gravel bikes, we're all on board. Makes riding the grab more accessible for lots of reasons. I don't know. Would we leave out? Like this stream was a lot more, I want to say, friendly to the notion of gravel suspension than I was thinking it was going to go.
I think it's great. I mean, for me, like I said, I have a lot of experience on the Redshift stuff, and I'm working on a review for the seat post. But for me, it's like there's a lot of stuff that I've ridden it. I'm like, man, I can hammer it down this now. I'm not either lightening on the pedals to let a little bit of gap between me and the seat kind of float, or I'm not just lifting me up and just riding across it. I can full on hit it hard. So I think there is a need for it depending on where you're at. I think there's totally a use. I don't think that it's gimmicky. Because the first time I got on that seat post and like smashed it down this trail that I normally ride, especially on the high frequency stuff, coming from a full rigid bike, it was like, oh my God, this is great. I get it. Now, is it heavy? Yes. On the flats, do you notice it? No. But like you said, Russ, is like, I'm going to be calculated, and I'm going to do a video on full rigid versus kind of semi squishy to full like Cadillac mode is what I call it, like full suspended front and rear. I think that's really where I loved Legos as a kid, to where like I like that aspect of the bike, to where if I can just like, I can swap parts on it in 10 minutes and make it this or that, And another video I'm working on is I just did a road ride on my gravel bike, and there were some pros and cons to it, but this is what I did before. Yeah, it took me 20 minutes the day beforehand, but it worked. It was great.
Yeah.
It was super fun. It's something where I like that aspect because of that inner kid in me of like loving Legos and like taking things apart or changing them to make it work. I think there's a lot of that in the suspension avenue. I think everyone's taking their different take. I think the Sun Tour fork, in my opinion, too, I think that's the best option for if I was going to do something that, like substantial.
Yeah, something beyond just a redshift and get that next level. Yeah.
To get a 40 in the front and a 35 with that seat post in the back and not having to buy a proprietary frame set or any parts, to me is a killer setup. I think that's basically like a 1990s mountain bike, like that's what I think of it is. And that's what everyone's going to make the joke. It's like, that's what we're just we're digressing, but it is what it is, and I think it could be a happy medium, especially on certain trails,
Yeah. One place where, when I was testing the suspension seat posts, where I thought it was an interesting benefit is actually on like chunky climbs, where it's steep and you're going over baby heads. It let me keep traction more. It would bump me off the saddle less, so I could just stay seated and grind up. And that was where, because typically when I think suspension, like the biggest benefits can be floating when you're going fast and on a downhill. But I found like there were actually some real gains in terms of keeping traction and momentum going uphill.
Yeah, I've seen that. I get that too.
Eric, are you frozen or are you just pensive?
I'm just listening. I'm listening
Okay.
to.
But like Eric like he's the only one who gets that hard face frozen, like without it being like awkward. He's like,
it's because he's Canadian. It's just
I'll make dorky faces.
Yeah. So Sean Gould says next big thing: suspension skateboards.
I think they have those, right?
Yeah, I think those are. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like hilarious off-road, like in the '90s, like late '90s, early 2000s. There's like these like skateboards that you would like strap into, and they've got like I'm pretty sure they have like they almost have like stroller tires on them, and they're like I think they were cool for 4 months.
Well, that was Canada because they were out in America probably for like 6 years.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah, it needed to be done in magazines, so it was like super late. Like.
So there were lots of comments about the low fork or low fork, and I've not ridden one, so I can't really, I can only speculate. Have you, Mike, Eric, have you guys thrown a leg over one?
No, but I've been around, like I've been around them, but that doesn't mean anything. Like,
right?
I don't know. I just think they're so ugly. I can't.
So I've tried it on. It was a customer's bike, and I asked him if I could just ride it. I mean, granted, it was like a parking lot kind of whatever ride. So they have different levels of travel based on the bike. I believe their gravel one is 30 mil of travel. Maybe it's 40. Could be wrong, but it's also like $900. And it is less expensive, or sorry, not less weight than a traditional fork. So yes, if you're going from let's say an on average 550, 600 gram rigid fork, that's not, like an open fork or whatever, those are super light. And you're looking at a $1,300, like $1,000 Fox Float 32, this kind of fits in that great middle. The only other thing I've heard from customer feedback from like guys we had in the shop was the carbon blades they would say like they called it like getting warm to where they wouldn't like respond the same if you did like a long descent. Because the friction would heat them up where the I don't know. That's what they would say. I didn't understand that aspect because I'm like, it's a carbon blade. It's going to react the same. I get it could be transferring heat because it's,
and maybe the elasticity changes with temperature.
Yeah.
So I haven't done a long, I've never done a real descent on them, so I don't know that. But in theory, that is. Oh, there we go. Oh, glass. Okay, they're on glass fiber. Okay, that makes a little bit more sense. So I think that engineering wise and weight wise, if somebody's looking for that happy medium, yes, it is less weight. Yes, it is the same amount of travel. but I don't know how it is under braking compared to the two. I'd have to literally ride them back to back. I think we all would. But as far as like a less offensive package, visually there's one side, and then there's like a weight wise and functionality side where like you have to see what camp you're in, I think.
I don't know. I see them all over Instagram all the time, and
yeah,
I was just like, man, oh man, I hope this photo doesn't have a lot of likes.
And I'd love to see a bike with that fork and the double decker bar. That'd be.
Oh gosh, you know what? The more that we make fun of that double decker bar, the more. And every time I look at it, I'm like, I think I'd get one. I think I'd get one.
I want to see the double suspension. I want to see either a stem suspension or a bar suspension with the fork to see if it like gets weird, you know? Because I've never seen anything with double suspension in my like memory. I couldn't think of anything.
I think someone in the Discord,
that came up,
was saying he was riding the Redshift with the suspension gravel fork.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he was like, it's like the best thing ever.
Okay, well,
and
I don't know. I feel like if they have different spring rates, it could get kind of confusing, and I don't know, maybe you get used to it. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, again, all I can picture is like that floating feeling is such a cool feeling when you experience it for the first time on something that is tuned for your weight with good compression, good rebound. Like I like thinking of that moment a lot, and I'm like, you know, even for the title of our video, it's like, do you need suspension? The simple answer is yes, but do you need suspension parts? Maybe not, but you do need a big enough tire that is going to keep you from being tired.
Right.
Like at the end of a ride, right? Like, you know, I have said in videos in the past, like, yeah, you can go ride on like 28s. Hope you don't get a flat. You can do it. I don't know, like maybe it's because I was 22 or 23 years old then. And like nothing hurt, but like things hurt now. Like,
Yeah.
I'm still only 28, but it's like, you know, like I've not been particularly gentle to my entire body, and I've almost been worse in the last week. And it's like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to go take a road race bike off road anymore. Right. Probably I would for a YouTube video, but like
for Dollar Shave Club, Eric will do it.
I'll do it.
So. Right. or Squarespace.
Squarespace.
Eric will do it while shaving his legs, and that's while building a website. Like
Keeps.
You know,
I'll do it for keeps.
Oh yeah, we need Keeps. If anybody's watching this, yeah.
I'll do a Keep sponsorship, no problem.
There you go. Cool. Well, I think I'm gonna take it home here. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us tonight at Alternative Cycling Network. Again, if you missed out, we've got a brand new channel where we're gonna start doing these live streams pretty soon. If not the next one, definitely the one after that. So if you like this content, be sure and subscribe there. And if you've not already, subscribe to our individual channels. Mike from Locked In, Eric from Spindat. I think I did manage to put those links in the description, I believe. I copy and pasted them from an old live stream. So with that said, everyone have a good night and keep the supple side down.